Hey everyone, it's Colin with Legalized Mischief Productions. Thank you for joining me and welcome and Merry Christmas. And I hope you're having a great Christmas. Hope you're spending time with your family. I've set this to be published automatically, so I'm not actually working today, don't worry. But I did want to get this tutorial out. This one is special to me. This is a personal scheme of mine for Nighthaunts for Age of Sigmar. And I want to do this for a number of reasons. I get asked about it a lot. I love this scheme. I wish I had more time to paint this army. But it's a very unique scheme. It's one that I really enjoy. I think there's some really good colors involved. Some really good techniques involved that have a lot of different applications. And it's just a lot of fun. It'll mix up, all the Space Marine content, infantry content. So, I mean, this is infantry, but, I'm working on that too. So... but we have here Lord Executioner. This one is just a really great model. I mean, I love literally every model in this army. This one's really cool because it's just spooky. It has some really cool elements. All the Nighthaunts have this kind of ethereal body element, and then the cloak, some arms, some metallics. The blade, the shackles, and then kind of the spooky skull ethereal part. Some of them are wearing chainmail. Some of them have, just a lot of different little elements, but not too many that you really get bogged down trying to paint an army. So what we're going to be doing, I actually have an example model because this is my army. This is one of the models that I have painted for my army, Knight of Shrouds. And so what we're going to be doing is, and you can see this is a very striking, this is like a magenta Nighthaunt army. It's really cool. I can't wait to get more of this army painted. I just think it's going to be striking on the table. But so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the magenta ethereal glow, the body glow today. And then to offset that, we're going to have a really nice turquoise glow for all these little floaty skull elements, right? So that magenta and turquoise is a pretty classic combo. It's going to look really, really good. They're going to complement each other really well. They're going to pop. We have a little bit of turquoise worked in on some of these basing elements down here. So over the course of the tutorial, we'll be covering, this kind of really ghoulish flesh here, these rusted metallics. And then one of my favorite parts is just all this texture on the robes using kind of textured highlights instead of these really nice clean highlights. It really offsets the smoothness of this kind of ethereal glow for the model with using those really choppy textured highlights on the harder elements of the model, like the robe, the metallics. They're not going to be even and smooth and beautiful. They're going to be super choppy and worn. And it's just a really fun model to paint. It's a really fun range to play around with. And it goes pretty quick because there is a lot of airbrushing involved. We do the airbrushing and then basically just base coat the cloak black and do some texturing and then pick out some details and we're done. So it's a really cool army. I'm excited to be doing a tutorial. So that's kind of what the end product is going to look like. That's what we're going for with the magenta going to that deep purple and out to that kind of faded pink there. So on this model, what that's going to look like is, darker purple here going out to that pink. And then all this texture in here, those ghoulish kind of dead flesh arms. We'll do something cool with the sand dial there, and then the turquoise coming off the axe is going to be cool. And then the thing about this army, though, is because of just how the models are built, there's a lot of gap filling involved, and you also have to do the base before you start painting the model. Otherwise, it's just kind of a pain, and it won't look naturally integrated. So after we do all the airbrushing, I'll go back off camera when I base coat the cloak black. I'll also go back and paint in the basing elements black again and get a fresh start on all those elements. So first things first, we're going to do the Magenta Bits. And for that, I'm using Vallejo Model Color Magenta, Scale 75, Inktense Violet, and then I typically use Vallejo Model Color White, which is very good. I've been experimenting with this Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White. This has been really good. I'm really enjoying using it, so I'm going to use it today. But Vallejo Model Color White's really, really good as well. I've been using it for years. I'm just always on the lookout for new whites. And then for the turquoise, we're going to be doing Vallejo Model Color Turquoise and Vallejo Model Color Blue Green. And believe it or not, I'm going to mix in some of this Inktense Violet to do the deepest shadows on the turquoise and kind of tie it in with the deepest part. So the deepest part of this is going to be shaded violet of the magenta, and then the deepest part of these turquoise elements will be shaded violet. It'll bring those two elements together. They won't just be contrasting each other. You know, they'll have a shared kind of shadow, a shared past. You know, so I think that'll look really, really cool. And this model, this model will not be given away at the end of this tutorial. This one is mine. This will be added to my army, my very small army, the painted part anyway. I have some models for the army, but not many of them are painted. But that's okay. It's funny with the Nighthaunts, and I'm just thinning this Vallejo Model Color Magenta with some water. What's funny is with Nighthaunts, you know, the models themselves are really easy to paint. They go together really quickly. There we go. That's good. They go together really quickly, build wise, and as far as like airbrushing and everything goes, they just take to it really well. You'll see. I mean, you know, now we're gonna get just the deepest shadows here. We're gonna hit with this thinned kind of mix of that violet ink, and you don't need a lot of that violet ink because a little bit of that stuff goes a long way. And you don't have to be too fine with this because we're actually going to go and reset the highlights by going back over this with white on the lower areas to where we really want that magenta to pop. So you just want to make sure to get a nice even base coat. So the Nighthaunts. Now I'm going to clear most of that paint out of there, and that's a little lighter than I want it to be, believe it or not. So I'm just going to do a real thin. I'm going to add 1 drop of the violet to just what was left in the cup after I kind of rinsed it out and dumped. I didn't shoot all the paint out. I just dumped it out into my jar here. So there was still a little bit of that initial mix in there. So this isn't just pure violet ink, but you can see that it is darker. So I'm just going to get kind of the darker just right at the top and on the inside of the body up there, and just kind of darken it just one more step there. Perfect. So you'll see they airbrush really well, and then it's just a bunch of texture. So painting them actually goes pretty quick. It's pretty straightforward. But the prep work that goes into Nighthaunts is a lot. you have to do a lot of gap filling because they are wearing these cloaks, and most of them are in 2 pieces, so there's a seam. So, there's a lot of gap filling and sanding involved with that. And then you have to build the bases. We don't have to, but it's a good idea to build the bases around the model before you even prime them. So that's another element. In my basing process for them is the same as the base build, the simple basing video that I posted. I think I posted that in September. It's the same exact process, but it's a multi-step process. It's not just, oh man, I got some paint on my jeans. It's not just, throw some texture paint on there. You could do that, of course, but my basing for them is a little bit more involved, so that takes some more time. So it's just a process to get these guys to the point where you're ready to throw. You're ready to get to the airbrushing, but I'm not in a rush. Excuse me, not in a rush with these guys at all. So no worries on my part. But so now we have a little bit of that white, just thinned down just a little bit with water, and now we're going to come back. And this doesn't have. Whoop, that's a little strong. A little strong. Not thin enough, apparently, because I'm getting a lot of spatter here. So this is the thing about kind of trying out a new paint, is it does take a little getting used to. So like that spatter is definitely not ideal, but we'll go ahead and continue on and just see if putting the magenta over that will take care of that. Take care of that spatter. If it doesn't, we can always just add. So we'll do the magenta, and then if that doesn't get rid of the spatter as much as I like, when I'm done doing that first pass of magenta, I'll just add the violet ink back into it, and so that way I'm not going back and forth. Instead of doing like magenta and violet now, and then emptying that, and then doing magenta, and then doing magenta and white. Excuse me. When you're airbrushing like this, you can always. So here's just pure magenta. I'm going to cover all the white areas. Now we may want to go back and. That's not going to take care of all that spatter, so we're going to have to go back. You can always go back and forth, and you'll see me do it from time to time, depending on what I'm working on, but you can always go back and forth and glaze back in shadows, glaze back in highlights, and that's how you get really, really smooth transitions. It's one of the ways you get really smooth transitions. You can get smooth transitions just the first time with, really thin paint, kind of going back and forth. That's one way to get, reliably get very smooth transitions. But another way is just to kind of go back and forth, and using, get thinner each time to where, I think that might be too much violet, but that's okay. To where you're really, the thinner the paint, the smoother that is too much. That is a little too violet, but we're going to make sure it's nice and thin. Maybe get a touch more magenta in there. Each time getting thinner and smoother, and those transitions from one color to another will just get smoother. So that's one thing. Like I usually don't worry about getting progression perfect the first time through, because I know I can go back. So you can see like here, I don't know if it's showing up on camera that much, but there's a little bit of spatter in there. But I'm just going to come back, and this is really thin. Like, you can see how thin this is. Super, super thin. We do not want this to be, it doesn't have to be thick to get rid of that spatter. You know, we're just gently, very, very gently deepening those shadows, and now we have that nice even transition there. Then I'm going to check. It's nice that I have a reference model here. I'm going to check and see just kind of how high up. I think this is going to be, that's a lot of purple, but we're going to roll with it. The nice thing about doing, nice thing about doing, you know, Nighthaunts or something that's this kind of natural. I mean, I know it's a ghost, but you know, we're not painting like armor segments, right? We're painting this ethereal, ghostly, you know, quote unquote body. And the nice thing about doing that is it doesn't have to be uniform, right? It doesn't have to be the same amount of purple on each model, the same amount of turquoise, you know, the same exact shade. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little different from model to model, whereas, you know, doing, you know, say Eldar or Space Marines or Tau or something like that, where you really want consistency across that armor. That's one of the things that makes those armies shine, is that uniformity and that even look to everything. So it's some nice freedom when painting models like this, or painting, you know, Chaos Demons, or painting, I don't know, anything organic. You know, Tyranids, or I can't think of the Wood Elves, the new Wood Elves. I can't remember the faction. So this is the magenta mixed with white, and we're just going to start at the end. And this is a little thin, so we're just going to go real light the first time around, because we don't want it to just be this pale white. We want this pale pink. We want that original. We want it to be kind of majority magenta. And I can already tell that with this pink, there's too much purple here. So there's too much purple. There's not enough of that magenta. So we have this kind of awkward looking, you know, it's mostly, it goes like purple to this kind of very light pink. So I'll show you what to do when that happens. It doesn't look bad, but I don't love it. So now just a little bit more white. I really want a strong transition from out to like a very light end of the model here. I don't want a weak transition. I want a really strong transition. So I'm going to lighten that up one more level, very thin, and just hit kind of the ends of the models there. And that looks nice. I'm happy with that. And I haven't painted the scheme in a while, so that's there's kind of a learning curve here. So that looks more white than it is on the model. On the model, it's still that light pink, but it's a little lighter than the test model here, you can see. But you can also see how much more magenta is in this baseline model that I've already painted for the army, right? You can see, like here on the side, you can see this magenta goes up a little higher here, and it comes down a little further here, where this is more purple and light pink. So while that unevenness is fine, it's not something that I'm like, oh, I need it to be 25% that purple color, and then, 50%. No, nothing like that. But it is, I can tell just by looking at it that it's too purple for my liking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with magenta again, very thin. And I'll show you on my hand again just how thin. Just how thin this magenta is, because we're really glazing at this point. We're not painting over. We don't want to paint over what we've already done. So you can see how thin. Oops. You see how thin that is. It's a little PSI is a little high. So one of the things I love about my Extreme Patriot is you can use this dial to raise and lower the air pressure on your airbrush, just right on the brush. So this is so thin that I wanted it a lower PSI, but I don't have to go down to the compressor and kind of figure it out. I can just go straight on the brush. It's a really cool little feature. Here I'm going a little bit higher on the purple, and I'm going to bring that out a little bit. And now I want to make sure that I don't want to negate the purple, and I don't want to completely discount that nice light transition that we've got going on with that lighter pink. But I do want to reestablish the magenta as the dominant color in this paint scheme. This isn't a purple paint scheme, this is a magenta paint scheme. So I always want to make sure that I'm checking that the dominant color is showing through more. Now you can see there how much better that looks, how much more even that looks, and how much more magenta that looks than it did before. Really, the purple here is like in the deepest shadows, you can see, and then it really goes out to magenta. And that's what is that? It's like a little fleck of something there. Whoa! That was disastrous. Okay, so that's what not to do if the paint's not coming out. So that was almost disastrous. Thankfully, I had a damp paper towel nearby. So there's a little fleck of like metallic paint right there that I want to eliminate. And this paint's so thin, I'm not trying to do it all in one shot. Right, so there, it's gone. I'm done messing with that. That model's been painted for like a year and a half. So moving on from that disaster, before I ruin a model that I've already painted. Whew. Don't try that at home, please. Do as I say, not as I do. Because that was dumb. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing for the turquoise elements on the top of the model. We get that Vallejo model color turquoise. And now these elements are far enough apart that there should not be any overspray onto the lower parts of the model. You know, famous last words. Being, you know, should, if, you know, this should work. If it doesn't, I'm going to be sad. But I think it'll be all right. Usually, you know, if those elements were closer together, I just saran wrap the bottom part of the model and make sure that it was protected. Right now, I'm mixing some of that Inktense violet into the turquoise to just get a really nice deep shade. And this is still going to be blue. This isn't going to be a purple shadow. But it's going to have that kind of violet. So we're just really going to spray this from underneath so that we don't really have to go back with the blue. The turquoise is going to cover... There we go. Turquoise is going to cover itself a lot better than magenta did. So like there you can see, whoops, shoot, sorry. So there you can see we shot just pretty much directly underneath with that turquoise and violet mix. And I'm actually going to see if I can't just do a little stronger violet. I haven't done this before with the violet shading the turquoise, so this is my friend Brian Harvey, host of Splinter Mind. This is one of his particular fetishes, is shading turquoise with purple. So shout out to Brian. So you can see that's a little bit more violet, a little bit more true. It's funny. I add more violet, and it's going more towards like a true blue than an actual real violet. But that'll be a really nice color to have in the shadow there. So it's not really, you know, similar per se to the violet that we actually have going on in the pink, but it's dark, and it's dark enough that that it'll look, we'll get a good effect out of that. I'm going to be happy with that. I can tell already. So. Now we're going to go straight to the blue-green. I thought I was going to do turquoise, but I'm just going to go straight to this blue-green because I really want this to be super vibrant and pale. So I want to go to that blue-green and then the blue-green with the white. And that's when it's really going to get super striking. I love this blue-green color. It's really, really good. Covers really well, and if you want to do any like verdigris or anything like that, it's a great color to use. A little less pressure there. And it's just super, super vibrant. So I was kind of going back and forth over the, you know, just when I'm thinking about, you know, how am I going to paint my Nighthaunts, what am I going to do, blah, blah, blah. And you can see just on my hand how well those colors work together. Like just testing it out on my hand, like you can see the palette there between the light pink, the blue-green, the dark kind of violet blue over here, the dark purple, the magenta, the turquoise. Like you can just see that palette. Just looks awesome. So now what we're going to do is just go in from above real light. We're not going to try and overpower everything right off the bat. And just get a nice coat of that blue-green. And this, we're really going to go at an angle. So you can see we want to cover those white bits, but we don't want to get underneath there. So I'm going to protect the parts of the model that we've already painted with my thumb. And try and hit those. Whoop, there we go. Make sure we don't forget the axe. So you can see we still have those deep shadows there. Still have those deep shadows on the sides. But then on top we have that really nice kind of turquoise Caribbean blue color. And now I'm going to come in with very strong, very light white highlight, and we're going to really focus on the front of the skull faces and the tendrils, like the ends of the tendrils. And this is going to be pretty light. I definitely want a lot of contrast. That's how you really make these things kind of glow. And you can use, the nice thing about this is you can use a recipe like this for OSL. You can use a recipe like this for power weapons. You can use, there's a lot of different application to like a glowing blue-green. There it is. Oh wait, this is the same color. It just hasn't worked its way to the front of the cup yet. Or it's not, or I need more white. One of the two. It's like more white. So let's get some more. Some more white mixed in there. There we go. Better. So really hitting the ends of those tendrils. And I'm not pulling the trigger back very far. And you can see, and then I'll hold the trigger where it's at and just kind of boop, boop, like just like that. And just work it up, letting the air dry it, and just kind of like popping the trigger back just very, very gently, because this paint is thin and I don't want it to. What is going on here? Where's that white paint? There it is. There we go. And if it's not coming out, don't force it. Clean the tip. You can always come back to it. Start at a tendril or something where it can get a little bit of blood. It's not the end of the world. And we really want to try and concentrate just right on these skulls here. So those are starting to lighten up, but it's not light enough. This is still too turquoise. Oops. Shoot. So we're gonna do two things. One, we're gonna hit this with almost pure white. And then the second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna come back and we're gonna deepen those shadows because that blue-green color is too light for that kind of overall base coat. That is the first time I've done the turquoise ethereal elements for this army, so I'm kind of learning along with you, but it's valuable, I think, to see how we evaluate whether those volumes and whether those tones are actually what we're going for, or if we can pump those up, if we can do better, basically. You're like, look, that's not enough contrast. That's not what I want. Let's keep going brighter, keep going. So now we're starting to get some nice contrast on those, but it's still not enough. It's just not enough. And this is almost white, but because it's so thin, it's not just going on, super white OSL. It still has a greenish hue to it. That less so. This is like pure white here. But there we've got some nice contrast now. But you can also see that it's like a little washed out now. Overall, ooh, don't want that. Like, I like the back, I like the contrast in the back a lot more than I like the contrast on the front. Contrast on the front's a little pale, it's a little washed out. So, get that white out of there, but I do like how light the skulls are. I do like that light kind of blue-green that we got going on the skulls, so I'm going to keep that. I'm going to try not to mess with that anymore. Make sure I have all that white paint out of the airbrush. I'm going to go back with turquoise, and I'm going to mix a little bit of violet into it. Because I want a really nice dark contrast here. But I want to be very careful. This is going to be very thin. Because I do not want to ruin that shade or the highlighting that we've done with going back and doing this shading. I really just want to end it after the shading, but we'll see how precise I can get here. So one of the things we really want to do is get the side of the skull there, kind of the side of the skull here, side of the skull there, side of the skull there. Really push that. Oh, shit. That doesn't look natural. So now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do this shade from underneath. And now that's too much contrast. Now that looks kind of dumb, right? Now that's popping too much. And this is what I was talking about, back and forth, back and forth. And it's a little annoying. I wish that had just worked, but it was a bit of a long shot. Because really putting that much shadow right next to, an almost pure white highlight is going to be too much. It's going to be too extreme. So if that happens, just like we did with the magenta, we can go back with our mid-tone, which is that green-blue, very, very thin. You can see how thin that is, right? We can go back with that mid-tone. First, I want to delete those white highlights on the X because I didn't like that. And now what we can do is we can come in kind of from the top, kind of back here. So we don't want to hit like the face itself, right? But we want to tone down those shadows. So we can come in from the top a little bit and just kind of fuzz those shadows out. And here I really want to get my finger in there so I'm protecting that magenta down there. So you can see we kind of ease those shadows off the skull on the left, where the skull on the right is still like really popping out. That skull on the left is much better integrated into the flames around it. So we're going to do that again. We're going to come in from behind, controlling where the paint is even able to go, and just knock down those shadows just a little bit to where that skull is both those skulls are a lot better integrated into the surrounding flames than they were previously. Maybe shoot them from the side a little bit. Whoop. There we go. Much, much better. So you can see we have better contrast around the skull, but it's not as crazy stark as when it was just the purple, just the really dark shadow next to those elements. Because we're not coming back to do a bunch of edge highlighting and fancy stuff. I mean, we're really, those faces are pretty much going to have to hold up on their own. We might do a little glaze of white just like on the eyes, but probably not. We're probably just going to leave those to their own devices because we don't want any sharp angles in those ethereal elements. We want those to be, now I'm just coming back with white again. That's too thin. Water. And I want the white to be thin because the absolute last thing I want at this stage is spatter. And the thinner the white is, the less chance there is of it spattering on you. Especially this late in the game. I just don't want that to happen. So there you can see those are much, much, much better integrated into the surrounding elements. Those faces are popping out. That's exactly what I wanted. It has some nice shadows on the sides of those skulls now. And from behind, we have some really nice shadows. So I'm happy with that. Now, took a little work to get there, but I'm digging it. So, that was a bit more of a journey than I was anticipating, but that's that's all part of painting. You know, that's for me. That's part of the fun of it. I mean, sure, it's not fun when it's not. I wouldn't use the word fun to describe having to go back over something 3 or 4 times to get it right, but all that is very valuable practice. It's very valuable troubleshooting. It's very valuable learning that you're doing when you're going back and forth like that. If it doesn't work out the first progression, that's fine. Rarely does it work out in the first progression. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. A lot of schemes that I do, like for the Patreon and stuff, I've done a bunch of times, so I'm not learning necessarily as I go. So sometimes I'll get it in one shot, but I just put a glove on so it's not conflicting as much. My paint on my hand isn't conflicting as much with the model, but painting is going back and forth and adjusting and just working until you get it to where you want it. And you can see the tones in these shadows are very similar, even though they're not, like, that's definitely blue, that's definitely purple, but the tones in those shadows are very similar. I think that's really cool, and I think there are other elements in this army where that's really gonna be cool. That's really gonna shine a lot more than just these two little ghost heads. There are a lot of elements in this army that have multiple ethereal elements to it. And so this is a great opportunity to establish that second color and just make sure that it works, because I really want to keep this magenta just for the kind of quote-unquote bodies of the troops of the Nighthaunts, and then like their mounts or any of this kind of skull stuff, or there are a lot of different elements that will be this other kind of turquoise color, and it's just gonna be really cool. It's gonna be a really cool effect. I'm really looking forward to digging in to this model. So off camera, I will paint the base elements black and base coat the cloak black. Nobody wants to see me just go through and do all that by hand, so I'll spare you and I'll just do that off camera. But when we come back, we're gonna start working some metallics and working some of this these ghostly kind of flesh elements, and this is going to come together super fast because it's such a straightforward model, such a textural model. So I love painting these guys. Hope this might rekindle me to paint some more Nighthaunts at some point. But yeah, so hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Merry Christmas to you. And I won't be getting another one of these out until the week after Christmas. But I will be doing this alongside Mephiston. Mephiston I will be giving away. This guy will be staying with me. So thank you. Thank you for your support. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Festivus, whatever it is that you celebrate. And thank you for your support. Very grateful for it. And I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I freaking love this army. So I'm really gonna enjoy this tutorial. So thanks again. We'll see you soon.